After a 2-month visit to Europe in early August, I returned to Australia to immediately fulfil a promise that I'd made to my older brother earlier this year if by then cancer had claimed him before I returned. That's him, Lyle Thompson. Well, he was a tad shorter than I am, but he was a giant to everyone in the central Queensland shearing sheds during most of the years from the late 1950s to the early 1990s. He had left Sydney for the bush when he was just 15.
Dad had to talk to me, said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Bush."
He worked hard in atrocious conditions.
We get a dirty old mattress, had been lying there for about 12 months, and be mice, all that, what do you call it? Sometimes were horsehair ones, but they didn't last long enough. They made a good nest for rats and then they ripped them apart. It was only a cotton cover. Anyhow, real bare thin, and it was like a cyclone bed, and it stretched that much, you'd be a big hoop in it. No wonder there was a lot of crook backs around in those days. And when there was no gauze, night time, just mosquitoes would come into your room. We only had carbide lights.
Yeah.
Those sizzle them up.
And he became one of the best-known gun shearers in outback central Queensland, based at Longreach. It was in this town that he started a family, and where he had made many friends in what was initially a wild outback township.
Oh, pretty rough old town, all right, yeah. Pub stayed open all night.
All night?
Well, they had customers. He had no customers, I'm not crazy.
He told his life story to me in early 2019. His book's called The Gun Shearer. Apart from a few visits to Sydney, I didn't see much of Lyle until he had retired, but especially after he'd settled on the Sunshine Coast at Tewantin in Queensland. I spent time there with him during my breaks from showing Australians around Europe. We often talked about our family growing up in Ryde, which back then was really a developing bushy part of Sydney. In most recent years, we told each other we had become the 2 last standing members of a family of 4. Lyle had spent a lot of time in Noosa before it became that crowded, popular tourist destination after being transformed from a simple fishing village. With Darcy, a mate from his childhood days in Ryde, Lyle enjoyed numerous fishing trips in the ocean waters off Noosa and on prawning trips along the Noosa River. Well, he showed me all that there was still to enjoy in Noosa and the hinterland on every visit that I made there. In his final years, he often made trips to nearby Traviston for a cuppa and a chat with my oldest daughter, Linda. In October 2021, he suddenly fell ill and he was diagnosed with B-cell cancer. He was 85 and he was given 3 months to live. I spoke to him by phone every second day, I think, but I had to cancel a Christmas journey to actually see him due to COVID restrictions. But I finally got to Queensland by late March to spend time with him at a Maroochydore nursing home, and he was responding well to an experimental cancer treatment and somehow not experiencing the predicted harsh side effects of that treatment. However, he set about seeing the members of his own family, and despite a positive attitude, he resigned himself to the real possibility of dying before I got back from Europe. He said he'd seen all the members of his own family and he would have no regrets if he couldn't hold on. Well, just a week before I left for Europe, at 4 a.m, I awoke with a start. Then his daughter Kathy phoned me to tell me that Lyle had died at 4 o'clock. He had told me that he wanted family and friends to attend a celebration of life event at his favourite pub in Tewantin. Well, they did, just a month short of his 86th birthday. However, Lyle's greatest wish was to be returned to Longreach and have his ashes scattered in the Thompson River there. Lyle said he knew that members of his own family and probably all his friends would not be able to make such a trip. So I promised him that no matter what, I would take him home. My eldest son Jim, with his military background and living close to Tewantin, as well as being a motor mechanic, would be the perfect person to help take Lyle back to Longreach. This is the story of that journey. Two issues were crucial to my mission. One was checking with the Queensland government that I could actually do as he wanted me to do. And unlike some states in Australia, I was permitted to go ahead. The second issue was good weather on the roads that are often closed when the weather closes in. After looking at the weather pattern, I booked my flights and made arrangements to put the plan into action on Monday, August 15. I was all set to travel with Jim, while both my oldest daughter Linda and my youngest daughter Jess would lend moral support, staying in the Sunshine Coast area that Lyle often called Paradise. They both knew that the trip to Longreach, a 2,200 kilometre return journey, would be an arduous routine of early starts and about 8 hours plus safety rest each day along the road. Well, I was up early at 5 a.m. that Monday in Sydney, and when I looked at the time, our lounge room clock had stopped at precisely 4 a.m. Well, I'll leave it to the mystics to ponder that occurrence. Despite the incredible queues and the late departure from Sydney Airport, plus Jetstar losing my bag, all went fairly well. At Maroochydore, Lyle's daughter Kathy handed over the 2 small urns as our precious cargo, and Jim took me to purchase a replacement bag and clothes. It was within 24 hours, but a long way into our journey already the next day, when I got the call that Jetset had found my missing bag. Well, Linda and her partner Brad had put us up for the first night, and by 7 a.m. the following day, Jim arrived to begin our long journey. It would take us northward through Gympie, a former gold mining town that I knew from previous trips, before turning westwards and upwards towards a part of Australia that to me, as a city boy, was uncharted and fascinating. Our first stop was a shopping mall in Biloela. Yes, that's the country town that became the subject of the political row over granting the Sri Lankan Tamil family permanent residency as they sought asylum in Australia. But for us, it was food uppermost, and as we arrived at the junction of the Burnett and Dawson highways, we were pleasantly surprised that a burger shop with quality meat was in the mall. So we decided on that option, thus avoiding any desperate quick meal. This town is in the Shire of Banana. Don't ask me why. Well, pondering that question, we continued up the A3 in the Capricorn region while Googling the answer. The Shire was named after a town in the Shire that was named for the burial site of a huge yellow-coloured bullock named Banana. Yes, we have no bananas today. Still on the A3, we made another catnap stop at the rural town called Doolulu, simply because it had a great rest area, well known too. And I wandered around there while Jim slept. We branched off from the A3 to our next stop at Duaringa. When Jim had completed his catnap, I told him we were unlikely to get any word from the information centre there because it wasn't displaying a red flag. But listening in on the Truckee radio channel, we picked up on highways further up being open. That was encouraging. Before long, we darted through Dingo, keeping our eyes peeled for sightings. We discussed Jim's previous experience of breaking down many years before at this somewhat less memorable junction between the Capricorn and Road 67. That runs northwest from its location in the Central Highlands. Well, I should mention that outside of our view, off the road, it does boast of 2 railway stations and a hotel-motel for its less than 400 people. But no dingoes were sighted. Well, after Dingo, we drove through Bluff. That seemed to explain a few things. However, names are becoming of some interest to us by that time. There was the town of Blackwater. Now, that was where Lyle had recently met up with one of his former shearing mates, Bill Storch, and they had inspected one of the mines there. This town is always busy, and it's named after the Blackwater holes that were discovered there. To us, it was just a good place to refuel, and as a catnapping site for Jim. From there, we were headed to our overnight stay in Emerald. Now, that's a town that takes its name from the emerald and other precious stone deposits in the area. I had booked a family room in the accommodation section of a pub there called Nightcap at the Star Hotel. It's the hub of the central Queensland Highlands. After the many hours on the road, Jim parked his large vehicle amid other huge vehicles, and we got a good meal in the sports bar. Before retiring to our rooms for the night, we took a walk along one of the main streets, and honestly we thought it was Christmas, which had come early. But it really was an oasis in central Queensland at the gateway to the outback. And the room there was perfect, with 2 bedrooms and the most comfortable beds I've encountered anywhere. Early next morning we ordered a quick breakfast at a modern bakery in Emerald, and then we headed west across the highlands for 5 hours on the sometimes slightly uneven A4 road surface. Soon we were passing through an area known as the Gem Fields, with small towns such as Sapphire and Rubyvale that make it fairly obvious what type of gems can be found. The sapphire fields located here are said to be the largest in the southern hemisphere. The few tourists that were parked by the roadside in this area certainly seemed to have a sparkle in their eyes as they plotted their visit to the gem fields. It was on this home stretch that I remembered Lyle's description of the landscape. As we moved through the high country, there were some stunning views. And then as we drove through the fatigue zones, Jim wisely took a few more breaks from driving. One of them was at the lookout in the Drummond Ranges, just above the railway line. Okay, so we've reached the point on the Drummond Range of mountains, just climbing them now, and it's real outback territory on the approach, and even up here with a bit of elevation you can see it's pretty rugged country. And we're just outside of Bacaldan, which Lyle used to always talk about it being the, first of all, the home of the Labor Party, where it was started because they backed the 19th century strike by shearers. And so therefore that's why many shearers just gravitated towards the Labor Party, because they'd been supported by them in that particular dispute. However, this is a really nice country, so I'm going to show you around just from this lookout, looking over the Drummond Ranges and down onto where we've come from, incoming from Emerald. And over there we can see the road leading back towards Emerald down there, and of course leading up here to the lookout on the Drummond Range. But just below us, right here on the lookout, there is a train line which is of course linking the townships, and it's only a single line, I think. All this time I've had a very responsible driver, and it's been a long drive. We're not quite to Longreach, but we're well on the way. And my son Jim is the driver, and we're taking a little rest stop here, which we've had to do because they talk about fatigue zones here, and fatigue really does set in on those long stretches. And how far did we go yesterday, Jim? About 800 kilometres from the Sunshine Coast?
I think it was about 745 or something. Not
Yeah,
sure.
close enough to 800 anyway. Actually fit it out. Well, you've got just about everything in here.
Yeah, well, when we took it up the Cape, it was very, very...
You went to Cape
reliable.
York, that's right, yeah. You got all the technical things as well as, you know, the U-Butte things for cooking and camping, right?
Yeah, well, I've done a lot of the work myself, fitted it and wired it, and just got all the right gadgets and all we need.
And when you turn the bright lights on the exterior of the vehicle, it looks like a stage. It's
Yeah.
so lit up.
Well, I've even got a 4-metre light, like an LED light, underneath the bonnet. I can do an oil change in the dark.
Right.
It's so bright.